engine oils and our little British cars. Yeah, we're going there today. Let's get into it. So the subject of engine oils and our old cars have been the subject of quite a bit of debate in the last 10 years or so, especially in the US. Now, in my case here, we are talking about the United States. If you're not from the United States, then this subject will be completely different for you. I've seen online, on the forums, every forum I've been into, there's this great debate, and it goes on forever and ever and ever, and it never stops. But the one things I see on online is you always got somebody jumping into the discussion who's from Germany or the Netherlands or England or someplace other than the US, and they go, just pick out any 20W50. They're all fine. Don't worry about it. If you don't live in the US, then you're not living with the same oils that we are. We have specific government regulations governing our oil that's different than the rest of the world, and it does matter for our cars. So here in the US, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that now, it's been a little while, the government mandated a major reduction in the ZDDP, or zinc diphosphate. It's actually not quite pronounced that way, but we're going to refer to it for the rest of the video as just zinc. It's a high pressure lubricant that stays on the cam surfaces and other surfaces and doesn't resist wiping off, giving you a protective layer so you don't wipe your cam. Now, the old oils used to have about 1,200 parts per million. And then at some point it was regulated down to, I forget the exact amount, but 900 and something parts per million. And everything seemed to be fine. Everything was working cool there. Well, then the government regulated it down even further. They went down to like 625 or something like that. Then that's when it became a problem. The reason they regulated it down was because it is not good for catalytic converters. That when a car burns a little bit of oil, that gets into the converters and coats the converters and reduces the effectiveness of them. So that's why they mandated it. But being the type of lubricant it is, there were some other, say, unintended consequences, if you will. Now, you ask any lubrication engineer, or you even ask the oil companies themselves, and they'll tell you, which I have talked to lubrication engineers before, and they say, it doesn't matter. What we replaced it with is better than what we took out. You shouldn't have no issues whatsoever. It should be fine. But the reality of the situation is, engineers, while they're smart and everything that they do works great within the lab or on paper, you know, being a welder and fabricator for many years, I've run into this many times too, where they put it on paper, it works on paper, but doesn't work in real life. Same thing with our oils. It doesn't always work in the real world the way it works in the lab. So when they reduced it down, we started seeing cam failures. And there was a bunch of discussion about what was causing the problems. Big engine manufacturers all across the US, the rebuilders and stuff, were all complaining about problems, calling the oil companies. Oil companies were saying, no, it's not the oil, it can't be the oil, it's got to be a parts problem. It's got to be a parts problem. And they were chasing their tails for a little while. And then some of the bigger engine builders said, you know what, I don't care what the oil companies say, I'm going back to high zinc oils, see what happens. And their failure rates went back to expected levels, which, you know, there's always going to be some failures, you know. you make enough of any part, doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna have a bad one here and there. No matter how good your quality control is, something's gonna get by eventually, you know. So it's normal to see a failure once in a while, but the failure rates drastically went up. And once these rebuilders went back to using high zinc oils, the problem went away. It was back to normal expected failure rates. So they said it's gotta be the fact that the zinc was removed from the oils. So, and there's lots of discussion on that, lots of debate, and it continues to rage, you know. Now I wanna also say, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a dumb British car mechanic who's working out in the field, and I know what I've seen from my experiences, what I've heard in my research, which I actually done a fair amount of research on oil years ago. So everything I'm telling you is basically my opinion based upon my experiences. So it's not rock solid gold. You can count on it 100%. So, you know, I stick with high zinc oils for my cars and all my customers. Always have, and I will continue as long as they're still available. So, a lot of people will say, yeah, it doesn't matter. You can just buy a 2050 oil has higher zinc content than a 1030 or 1040 or whatever. And yes, the last time I checked, yes, it's true, but it's still not at the levels we'd like to see. Now, the other thing is, when this all happened, people didn't know what to do. So everybody was recommending go buy diesel oil, because diesel oil still had high levels of zinc in them. But the problem with diesel oil is the additive package for the detergents aren't exactly optimal for gasoline engines. And then, since then, the US has also mandated lower amounts of zinc within diesel oils as well. So all of you guys out there who are saying diesel oil, buy Rotella, buy Rotella, buy Rotella, you might want to rethink that. You need to do a little bit of research. Because now, not only do you have lower zinc content, but now but you also have the additive package that's not, or with the detergents that aren't exactly optimal. So yeah, you might want to do your own research on that one before you continue to use and recommend to other people to use diesel oils. Now, I've got some examples of some oils. You know, I always get people like, hey, can I use just store brand oil? No, I wouldn't recommend it. Or how about the old GTX? Well, no, not really. Well, how about Mobil 1, synthetics? Well, when it comes to the Mobil 1, my research has come up with a few dead ends here and there. The best I can come up with is it sounds like you still want the zinc even in the synthetic oils. And these don't have the high zincs unless you get the right ones. You need to do your research on that. So go look at the websites, call the company, see what the zinc levels are. I do know that, you know, I'm playing with LS in my car here. On the LS's, when you go with radical cams, this stuff's not working anymore. They're finding out that you got to go to high zinc oils with radical cams in those too. So, yeah. Some of the oils, this is what I have on hand, some of the oils that you can use, driven. You get the right versions of these. These are made specifically for, you know, older cars. We got VR-1 from Valvoline. And now, and a recent, actually a fairly new one for me to see is Castrol GTX Classic high zinc formula. I've been using VR-1 for years. That's all I've been using for all my customers and every car. It has 1,200 parts per million. We're safe. It's not too much, and it's enough to be safe for break-in and for continuous use. And since I've been using this, I've only had one failure, and I can't necessarily blame the oil for that failure because that was on my personal engine, and I was trying a few things on that engine, looking for a little bit of extra power, and it could have been some of the things I did and not controlling vibration within the engine well enough, because not only did I lose a cam and have 3 lifters, all the hardening peel off of 3 lifters, but I also wiped out every rod bearing, every main bearing, and broke a main cap. So I don't want to say the oil was the problem. But the reason I use this is it's so readily available. Any of my customers can then go pick up a quart of this just about anywhere in the US because it's readily available at Napa on the shelf, O'Reilly on the shelf, and it's also available at Advanced Auto Parts on the shelf, but it's in the back room actually, because they keep it in stock to fulfill internet orders. So if you ask about it, they usually have it. Now, AutoZone, they only, last I knew, you could buy it online, shipped to home. Now, other parts stores, I don't know, because those other parts stores aren't in my area. But this is generally anymore around 10 bucks a quart. So you can find it a little bit cheaper on like Amazon. There are places like Menards, of all places, they do stock it, but it's spotty. Some Menards around me only carry the straight weights. Some have the 2050. Now, if you don't like using 2050 and you want to use like a 1030, 1040, then usually O'Reilly, Napa, and them, they can get it out of the warehouse for you. It is available on those weights as well. Now, the driven is usually available at places like JEGS and other high-performance outlets, and not everybody's got one of them around them, so that's why I don't use that for my customers. But then there's also the Castrol GTX Classic now. This has not actually been marketed out for all that long that I've known about, and it is available at Walmart, and it is a couple dollars cheaper at Walmart than Valvoline. But Walmart's already starting to phase it out off the shelves at some of their stores. So you may not always find that readily available. Now, of course, this conversation applies not just to our British cars. It applies to anything older that has a flat tappet cam in it. With roller cams, you don't need the zinc. So when you hear them talking about like, oh, they break in the new Corvettes on Mobil 1, well, they're all roller motors. It's different. It's not quite the same break-in anymore. The cylinders are honed differently. You don't have to worry about the wear so much within the cam. These cars, you have to worry about that. And of course, break-in procedure is also very important. So, and that's a whole other discussion I'm not going to get into in this video. But this applies to, geez, just about anything pre-1984, roughly. So Volkswagens, Porsches, old Porsches, old GM, Ford, and Chrysler products, just about anything. French cars, Italian, doesn't matter. anything that's older that uses flat tappet cams, this is a concern. Now, if you don't think it's a problem, run whatever you want to run, it's your car. Me, myself, and the fact that I'm taking care of cars for dozens, if not hundreds of people, I'm sticking with high zinc oil and playing it safe. I figure a few extra bucks, which actually, like this stuff here, it's 10 bucks a quart. Well, go buy this stuff anymore. It's still like 8, 9, so why not just spend a couple extra bucks? Make sure that with any one of these, or also there's other brands, there's definitely other brands available. This is just what's I have on hand right now to talk about. But for a few extra bucks, why not run the high zinc oil and just make sure you're safe? Because it's a whole heck of a lot cheaper than paying somebody like me to put cam and lifters in your car.